are some stories that just stick with you, and the Jody Plauché story, that stuck with me. So I'm very excited to have you all listen to my interview with Jody right after I give you a quick rundown and a background on what happened to him if you don't already know. So Jody Plauché grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He had 3 siblings, and his parents, they separated for some time. They never legally got divorced, and this was because Jody's father, Gary Plauché, sometimes had a bit of a drinking problem, but Gary he got sober at a certain point, and Jody has said that he and Gary had a wonderful relationship, and Gary was a wonderful father. So when Jody was growing up, his parents put him in karate. I mean, I put my son in karate. It's just something that seems right for your child. I mean, it's discipline. It's organized. It's great for most kids. And all of the kids in the karate class, they loved the instructor. And this was a man named Jeff Doucette. And Jeff really took a liking to Jody. He took a liking to his family even. And Jeff quickly earned the trust of Jody's family. So after karate, Jeff would sometimes bring Jody home. He would offer to bring Jody to the movies, and sometimes other kids would go. So it wasn't necessarily out of the ordinary, but this behavior quickly escalated into grooming. So it started with just touching Jody inappropriately in the car. And Jody sensed it was wrong, even at 10, 11 years old. He sensed that something wasn't right, but he didn't want to upset his parents, and he didn't want to upset Jeff. And he really didn't know any better. So he kind of just went along with it. And slowly this escalated into sexual abuse. So Jody began to be sexually abused at the hands of Jeff Doucette. And when Jody turned 11, Jeff had this idea that it would be okay to kidnap Jody and take him on this trip to California, to Disneyland, do all the things that you would, all while sexually molesting him. So when he kidnapped Jody, he dyed Jody's hair black, took him, to California, went to Disneyland to soften, I guess, the blows of the molestation. And Jody's parents were freaking out. And at one point, Jeff called Jody's parents, and police were able to trace the call back to Anaheim, California, where they arrested him. They brought Jody back to Louisiana, and Jody told his parents everything. He told them what had been going on, and his parents were just distraught. His father felt helpless. Gary Plauché felt like he failed. He didn't protect his son. He didn't know what to do. So Gary, and this was back in 1984, Gary, and there was no security at airports, so they were bringing Jeff Doucette back to Louisiana, the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, the police, and Gary was hiding out in a phone booth, waiting for him to walk by. And what he did then was caught on camera by the media, and this video has gone viral. And I think every Father's Day, this video is played about 20 million times. It's crazy. So I'm going to play this for you right now. And this is what happened after Jeff Doucette was brought back, extradited from California to Louisiana.
In March of 1984, when authorities escorted 25-year-old Jeffrey Doucette through the Baton Rouge airport to face charges of kidnapping and sexual assault on a 12-year-old boy. The victim's father suddenly appeared, shot Doucette while news cameras were rolling. The father, 39-year-old Leon Gary Plauché, pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of manslaughter and today received a suspended sentence with 5 years probation. The judge said prison would serve no useful purpose.
Wow. So that video, it's a pretty famous video. But as you heard, he got a suspended sentence. And I discussed this with Jody because I'm like, I feel like that would never happen nowadays. I mean, right? Like they completely were like, we would have done the same thing. We, would have taken the law into our own hands as well if someone did that to our son. And again, that's a bigger conversation to have. It's very controversial. However, think of Jody during this time, and he gets into detail about his feelings, which were conflicted. And before I play the interview with Jody, he did write an incredible book that I read, and that book is called Why Gary Why. And just some context, after Gary shot Jeff Doucette and they tackled him, one of the officers who knew Gary said, "Why, Gary, why?" And Gary's like, "You would have done the same thing." So that's just some context. But without further ado, I'm going to play my interview with Jody. And like I said, I think you're really going to get a lot out of this interview. Towards the end, he shares just some tips for parents to really look out for when trying to identify predators who might be hiding in places that we don't necessarily feel like we have to look. So again, without further ado, here is my interview with Jody Plauché. Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Conlin from Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. I am very excited. I have been anxiously awaiting this interview with Jody Plauché, who you all know as the author of Why Gary Why, but he is so much more than that, you guys. Jody has done amazing things in his life. He's worked in the field of violence prevention since 1995. He's served on the executive board for Men Against Violence. He's worked in victim services. He's, attended things at the White House for victim support. He's just an amazing guy, and I have a lot of things I want to discuss with him. So, Jody, welcome to The Outlier. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And I was admiring your accent before, your Louisiana accent. I love it.
Yeah, I'll just like the people in New Orleans, I'll just be like, "Hey, baby." I try to think I don't sound too much like a redneck because I can read and write, and I do public speaking, but I could see where I would have an accent to a few.
No, it's like I said, it's amazing. And it's not your I don't know what the accent that Gypsy Rose's cousins and all those people have. It's like a Creole. What is that called? I don't know. It's not like that.
It's more of a Cajun or Creole French accent. My grandfather used to talk like that. I listen to old recordings of my grandfather, and I'm like, man, he sounded like a Cajun hick.
Well, yours is not like that. Just letting you know, not like that at all. So I'm going to tell you, I discovered your story last Father's Day, actually. I guess I'm late to the game. Everybody I know already had seen the video that went viral. They knew everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is an incredibly fascinating story in the sense that I feel like what happened to your father after in the justice system would not happen now. That's how I feel, the vigilante justice. And I've just finished an episode on the Alaskan Avenger. I spoke with Jason Vukovic's sister, and I'm thinking to myself, we didn't discuss your case, but I'm like, or Gary, and I'm just thinking like this would never happen. I mean, do you agree?
I disagree. I think if you have the same people in the positions of power, for example, my dad knew a lot of people. My dad didn't have a police record. I mean, he had never gotten in trouble. Mike Burnett, they weren't good friends, but they knew each other since middle school. He was the lead detective on the investigation to return me. Mike saved my dad from being shot from the other cop, Bud Connor, who did not know my dad. He's reaching for his gun, and Mike jumps in front of him and keeps my dad from being shot. So he got away with that. But he'll tell you, in his own words, he said it on other interviews, that in 1984 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, they were not going to convict my dad for shooting a guy that had molested and kidnapped his son. And I don't think in 2024, if the same people, again, like powerful attorneys, or I mean, all these people rallied behind my dad. So I think that would still happen in this day. Now, he might not get off with probation and community service. He might have to do a couple of years or two in a nice facility or something like that. But,
yes.
you know,
and I was not clear. That is what I meant. I guess I was stunned. He got, what was it? A suspended sentence, time served. He essentially did no jail time. And I should have been clear on that.
He shot him on a Friday night. He couldn't post bond until Monday morning. And he was out. He never went back to jail after that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so that is where I'm like, I feel like that wouldn't necessarily happen, even though most people would probably today in today's society be like, or like, I would have done the same thing. Do you remember, just as a kid? I mean, I know that you talked about this a bit in your book, but if you could just explain to my audience the feelings that you were experiencing after finding out that your dad had shot Jeff.
Or just the feelings I had been experiencing the past year, because for that whole year I was under Jeff's coercive control. Like, even when he wasn't around me, I was still trying not to do things that he wouldn't find out about, that he would get mad at me. So you had that, but you had the conflict that, okay, Jeff was this, pedophile, sex offender, child molester. But when he wasn't doing that, 99.9% of the time, we were going to the movies, going to the mall, going to the arcade. So we were doing all those other fun things as well. So you had that conflict of someone who's been, you've been with pretty much every day for the past year, who is doing things that you don't like to you. But other than that, you're doing fun things, so it's replacing it. So there was conflict, because I was upset at my father for what he did, killing Jeff. And also, no one had known about the sexual abuse. But once Daddy shot Jeff, next thing you know, his lawyer's on TV saying Jeff was giving me gay magazines to look at, which weren't true. But everybody in my 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, middle school now knew what had happened to me. And so that was another factor in being pissed off at Daddy.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going completely backwards in this interview. And sometimes I think, just as an interviewer, I almost feel bad in asking you to recount some of this stuff, only because, well, you've probably talked about it a million times, and then also it's painful and traumatic. And so I appreciate you being open. So if there's something I'm not asking, please just go ahead and share it. So maybe that will also help me. But, in your book, you did say that the kids were kind in a way, like, and maybe you weren't expecting that when they found out about this, because it can be really awkward.
I think their parents, after that news aired that night on March 16th, 1984, I think a lot of my friends' parents maybe had a little talking with them and kind of explain what has been going on, why Mr. Geary did what he did, and don't make fun of Jody or don't bring it up, that kind of thing. Because only one person said anything negative, and he died in jail a couple of years ago, and he was in jail for molesting children. So.
I mean, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Wow, cool. So I mean, this, the story here is also, it's so familiar, I guess, where you have someone like Jeff, who was your karate teacher. He was just well liked in the community. The parents liked him. The parents trusted him, and so I think that people should understand that this relationship between teacher and student, it was among a lot of different students. You just happened to be his quote unquote favorite, I guess, and his target. And, and he preyed on you like over everybody else, but he still kept this facade up, right? To the parents, to the other kids. And I always wondered, I mean, did the other kids act jealous of this at all? Like, they had no idea what was going on behind closed doors. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if I have a favorite teacher and my teacher's giving attention to somebody else, I wonder if during this whole thing they were like, what the hell, Jody?
All right. So what pedophiles' biggest problem, their biggest issue, is when a child ages out, when they get too old. They like prepubescent children. They like certain age groups, 8 to 11 years old. Once you start developing secondary sex characteristics, hair on your genitals, under your arms, pedophiles don't like that. So I had a kid that was a year older than me that Jeff had been abusing before me, and he knew what was going on. And then when Jeff started to age him out and move in on me, yeah, he was really jealous. It was thinking about it, it's kind of sad.
Wow, that is so sad. Oh my gosh. And I wasn't even thinking that at first. That's so sad. Oh God. So, I mean, now let me ask, is your mom still alive today?
Yes.
She is alive. Okay. So does she, I mean, I can imagine your mom after this happened. And I know that, she and your father were not together, and she must have a lot of different feelings about this. But what was your relationship like after everything happened?
All right, so they had split up for several months before the shooting, but after the shooting, my dad went to a psychiatric facility for about 3 weeks, and then he moved back in. And my mother was like, "All right, if he's not drinking," because part of his probation was he couldn't drink.
Yeah.
She's like, "As long as he's not drinking, I don't have a problem with him." And so he moved back in, and it wasn't until he got off of probation and then went back to drinking to where she finally left him again. But she never divorced him. And he had a stroke in 2005 and then another one in 2011. But my mother moved back in like 2007 or 8 because she was living in Biloxi when Katrina happened. Katrina wiped out her apartment because she was living right across the street from the beach. So she had no apartment. So she had to live in a FEMA trailer for like 18 months. And my little brother lives directly across the street, and he just had his second kid. And so they convinced her to move back home, and they paid her to babysit so she would still have income, and she moved back home.
That's great. That's great. So you guys, I mean, do you talk about things now? Did you talk about them for a long time? When did you kind of stop talking about everything?
I mean, I talk about it all the time because I'm doing interviews. I wrote the book. My mother was just in a hospital, and of course, the nurse wanted to find out who she was. I mean, I get it all the time, but I don't feel uncomfortable talking about it. I tell people all the time, I promise you're more uncomfortable asking me the question you're thinking you might offend me with than I am.
Yeah. No, I'm like really happy to hear you say that. I just, I just think about like, I'm a mom, and I feel like she just must have a lot of guilt, or she must have had a lot of guilt just because it's hard. I mean, it's hard enough being a mom, and then to know what your son went through, and you couldn't help your son, and you couldn't explain things to him as it was. It kills me, Jody.
Let me just say this. All right, we're hoping to get like a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it ever comes out, it's going to be excellent. That's all I can say, really. But when it does come out, it's going to be excellent.
I really, really, really hope it does. And I wanted to pick your brain about a few things and a few cases that I think, have some parallels to yours, which right now the Menendez case is becoming a lot more relevant with the 2023 habeas petition, the new evidence, the documentaries, people calling for their release. In your opinion, I mean, I'll just tell you right now, what they did was savage. That was a savage, brutal killing. And I have some intricate thoughts on certain things with the law there, but I do feel like I believe them. They've served 30 years, and that could have possibly been manslaughter based on the assaults. And it sounds awful, but I just want to get your take.
Oh, I'm a huge supporter of the Menendez brothers. As a matter of fact, I didn't know this, but after that Menudo documentary came out, I sent Lyle a copy of my book, but they sent it back to me because in prison it has to strictly come directly from the publisher. So I could have got a publisher, but by that time I'd reached out and I sent the Facebook page that I think it's his wife created for him.
I follow it. Yeah,
I sent her a link to a digital copy of the book so she could maybe get it to him that way where he can download it and read it in jail. But yeah, I'm a big supporter, especially since the first trial, it was a hung jury or whatever. And then and then they rigged the second trial against them because they had lost OJ. No, but I mean, they totally were. Yeah, what they did wasn't right. They could have probably went about it a little differently, but
Yeah.
had they been convicted of manslaughter, they'd be out right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that was huge for me. I mean, they did take away their defense for the second trial. The judge had it, and it was, gosh, it was OJ, it was the 4 officers that were acquitted for beating Rodney King. LA was in a state of absolute disarray. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I've probably said that at nauseum. They needed a win, and I believe that the judge did not act justly.
Go look at my Twitter. I think I tweeted one of my last tweets was I wish Gavin Newsom I can mail Gavin Newsom some of my pair of my dad's balls or something, so he would have the balls to just go ahead and let him out.
So that's so funny. So funny. So, and it's also funny you bring that up because I was just thinking about this. Someone needs to, scream at Gavin Newsom. I don't know. Maybe that's getting around because on Lyle's Facebook page the other day, it was like, hey, we're asking you guys to step back and not, start anything with Gavin Newsom. And so I literally 20 minutes ago, I just responded and I was like, can you just elaborate and let us know why? Because they said it was per legal counsel. And I was like, oh, well, does this mean that legal counsel thinks the habeas petition will be granted? Because that would be great. I just want to know. So it's funny. I totally was thinking about the Gavin Newsom thing, and then that came up. But
hopefully I didn't ruin it for him.
Yeah. No, but really, Gary Plauché, he has probably the biggest balls, literally the biggest set of balls. Honestly, not to be crude, but truly that video and saying this not to promote violence or anything, but it is an iconic video. And did you ever think that it would get to this point? Millions of views? Never.
No. I mean, I knew what it was when it happened in 1984. I knew it was big, but I didn't know 15 years after I joined Twitter that I would watch just over the years. Like I might get 5 tweets 15 years ago on Father's Day. Your father was a hero. Now it's just all day. I had one tweet go out over 20 million views. And I was just saying, hey, that my dad didn't get completely off. I mean, he was a convicted felon. He pled no contest to manslaughter, and he couldn't vote. He couldn't carry. We couldn't have guns in the house. We did, but or at least we had like a pistol. But so he didn't get off scot-free, and he had to obey himself. He was on probation 5 years. If he screws up, he goes back to jail for 7. So I mean, he didn't get off scot-free, but people would say it was too light, but some people say it was too heavy. So
I get that. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't think he was necessarily a danger to society. I wouldn't be afraid that Gary Plauché was going to shoot me if I was at the airport or coming off a plane or anything like that. But what was your relationship with your dad like after the dust settled? And clearly the dust never actually settles when you've experienced something like this. And, but what was your relationship like?
I always felt I had a great relationship with my father. My father had a great relationship with all his kids. There were the moments when, he may have had a little bit much to drink and you kind of, you get tired of seeing that. But for the most part, he would lay back. He was always trying to be the entertainer. And I kind of had his personality. So, I mean, me and him, I got back into sports. Life just kind of got right back to normal. It was really weird, just kind of how normal things were, but they weren't, because I was at the Little League Park in 7th grade, and there's Sally Bush, the prettiest girl at the playground, and her dad's Brian Bush, who was the DA. So I can't go talk to her because her daddy's prosecuting my daddy. So it wasn't normal, but again, but I'm out at the park playing baseball. So
that's actually really funny. That's really funny. I mean, I've read just different accounts where your dad did feel so helpless and he didn't know what else to do. He felt like he failed you. Did you ever feel like your parents failed you?
No.
Never.
Right? I would have dedicated my book to my mother if I did. And, you know, me, like I said, me and Daddy had a great relationship. And I think I did him justice in the book by portraying that he was a wonderful, but, you know, he had his drinking issues, a wonderful, but, you know, flawed man. But when Gary Plauché had to be Gary Plauché, he was Gary Plauché.
Yes, and he passed away in 2014, right?
Yes, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary in a couple weeks.
Oh, and I'm sure that you and your family miss him so much. My gosh.
Oh, everybody does.
Yeah.
My dad was a friend of many.
Now, Jody, would you say though, now, I mean, now it's 2024, you would not condone vigilante justice at this point?
No, I never have. I always said I do not condone what my father did. What my father did was put himself in a position to be prosecuted, to go to jail for the rest of his life with 4 kids at home and a wife. I mean, that's not advisable to anyone, you know. But
Great point.
but we did get a pretty cool video out of it.
Yeah. I mean, we got a literal iconic Father's Day video out of it. Now, is anyone from Jeff's family, or were they ever in touch with your family?
No, well, Jeff's brother Roland, I want to say up until the shooting, my mother would contact him and talk about what was going on with Jeff and stuff like that. As far as like the kidnapping and that kind of thing. But no, I don't think we ever really talked to them after. Me and Mikey ran into him one time at the record store, ironically enough. And he was with some guy he was talking to, and I said hey to him because I mean I couldn't have just turned my back. He was walking in the door. He was walking out. I was walking in. Like,
how old were you when you saw him, and how old was he?
I think it was 95, I believe. So okay. 94, maybe. Yeah, it had to know. Anyway, it was. So I could.
Like late teens.
I was in college.
College, okay.
Yeah, I was in college, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm coming to get like Michael Jackson had like a new album or something like that." And somebody goes, "Oh, somebody ought to shoot that pedophile." And I'm like, "He did not just say that." What?
Oh gosh! Wait,
clearly
who
he didn't.
Said that in the store?
It was. So Roland came walking out. He was talking to this guy. I just assumed it was someone he knew. And so when I shook Roland's hand, I was like, "Yeah, I was just coming here to get like Michael Jackson's new latest album or whatever." And the guy was like, "Yeah, someone shoot that pedophile." I was like, "Oh my god, he didn't just say that." And he clearly doesn't know who I am.
Who's Roland again?
That's Jeff's brother.
That's his brother. So he didn't know. Oh my gosh. Oh my.
Yeah, he didn't know who the 2 people were talking to each other.
Right. Okay. Oh God. And what was the energy like between you and Roland?
Well, luckily there was two negative things that happened. My little brother had just got out of the hospital because he decided to hold his breath underwater and passed out, and we didn't realize for a couple of minutes. And so then he spent a few days in the hospital. Well, when we were giving him the Heimlich maneuver, his face was hitting the concrete, so his face was all torn up. Oh. And so he had just gotten out of the hospital, so Mikey's face was all torn up, and Roland had a cast on his arm up to here where he had cut himself, and he had to get a cast and stitches. So we were able to talk about medical stuff real quick, and we kind of moved on pretty quickly.
Just really awkward. I mean, I give you credit for even having a conversation with him. That's incredibly awkward.
I mean, I always liked Roland. Roland was kind of like the class act of the family. You know, he was the brother that, you know, had the carpet business. And then, you know, he went to Vietnam. And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, for those who believe in the United States of America and the Constitution, in the protections that you have as an American, the right to a speedy trial and all this stuff, Jeff deserved that. Okay. He didn't get it, but he deserved that. And that's what Roland went to war for. So, you know, I respect Roland going to Vietnam for those rights. And I don't have a problem with him saying my brother deserved his day in court, but because truthfully he did.
I think that's really admirable that you can speak that way and acknowledge that. And just so I'm clear, the Doucette, like that family, Jeff's family, you knew their whole family just, I don't want to say from growing up because he was so much older than you, but just from the town and
no, well, yeah, his brothers lived in town, or, you know, town over. And so, you know, if we would go to camping in one of their backyards. So I mean, he had like these like wooded areas, and so yes, I met all Jeff's brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so and we even went to Port Arthur one time. So I met his mom, his sisters. One time, his older brother got in a wreck, really bad wreck, and Jeff's sister stayed with my mom because she was from Port Arthur, Texas, and she needed a place to stay. She stayed with us here. I mean, so
Wow.
you know, eventually, yeah, Jeff was my dad's friend at one time. He was my mom's friend at one time. You know, but you rape
Yeah.
their kid and kidnap them, then you lose that
Yeah,
friendliness.
right? Exactly. And now, how would you just describe your personality, I guess, as a kid before and after Jeff, and then after everything?
I don't know. I mean, my mother says I was a sweet kid before Jeff, and I was a an asshole after Jeff. But
Really?
I do have an asshole side of me. I'm very impatient. I know that I'm very very impatient. Um, but I mean, I think deep down inside, I still am a good person. I mean, I didn't. Whenever I went on Geraldo the first time, and this kid came forward, he was being molested in Baton Rouge by this pastor, and he was molesting these two boys. And that's when I kind of decided, okay, I'm going to make this my life's work. And so, you know, how people go, if I can just help one person, well, I helped two on the first time. I wasn't even trying. And I was like, you know what? No, two's not enough. I'm going to keep going and see how many more I can help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that is so important because especially with boys, they don't want to come out and say it. They are so ashamed just from what I have learned and studied and researched. Boys, and this goes back to Menendez. They didn't want to admit what was going on. So I think for people to hear from you, that's incredibly powerful. And I wanted to ask you about when you did go on, it was like, God, it was the 90s or the 80s. And I believe this happened in 1984, but it's like all of the talk shows were so popular. And so I can only imagine you as a kid showing up there and doing this interview. I mean, what was that like?
All right. So my parents basically told the producers that, you know what, this is Jody's story. When he turns 18, if he wants to talk about it, then y'all can call him when he turns 18. So in 1991, we got a call from the Geraldo Rivera daytime talk show, and me and my dad decided to go to New York City, and it was totally just to go on a free trip. We got a free trip to New York City. We even asked, can we stay an extra day? We went to a Yankees game. We went to the top of the World Trade Center, not thinking of the consequences of what might happen after um, the show aired. I wasn't even thinking about what might happen. But I will tell you, you want to hear the weirdest thing ever? This
Yeah.
is the craziest thing ever. So they were filming two shows that day. The day the music died was the title of the show before us that they were filming. And it was about the plane crash that killed the Big Bopper, Little Richard, Richie Valens and Buddy
Yeah,
Holly.
that's
And
right.
Buddy Holly's wife was there. Peggy Sue was there. Donna was there. And as a special guest, they had Little Richard. So I got to meet Little Richard. I got to meet him backstage, and he wasn't prissy. And I've known that Little Richard wasn't all prissy.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, hey, Little Richard, nice to meet you. He's like, nice to meet you. And I was like, wait a second. Wait, what?
Yeah.
And so, all right. So then the next show we meet Geraldo. My dad brought him like some spices and stuff, some Cajun seasonings, and gave it to him as a gift. And we go and we do the show. It airs. We filmed it in April. It aired in June. And then that's when I get the call from Mike Barnett saying that they had arrested this pastor who was molested these two boys. But and then that was the moment I said that it changed, where I was like, I can help others. I'm going to use my story for good. Well, guess what? The day the music died, February 3rd, 1959,
Yeah.
was the day Jeff was born.
Whoa. That is creepy. That gives me chills. Oh,
Is that not crazy?
wow. No, that is crazy. And wait, so you met someone while also doing Geraldo, a young man who was molested by his two pastors. He
No,
shared
no,
this, or?
no. All right, what happened was when the show aired in Baton Rouge, when it aired June 4th,
Okay.
there was a little boy in Baton Rouge who was being molested and saw me on the show,
Okay.
told his mom, and they arrested the pastor. He was molesting another boy, and he said, I saw the Jody Plauché story on Geraldo. That's why I told.
Oh my gosh. And that's literally when you were like, I need to do this. I need to help people. I need to, yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so incredible. And so that right there, 1991, you were 18 and you just pretty much you were like, this is what I want to do.
Yep. Actually, we filmed it. I was 18 when it aired. I was 19. But yeah,
Okay.
that's what I've known since that time. I'm going to write a book. I want to speak. I mean, that's why I went to school and graduated. I got general studies minors in philosophy, speech communication, and psychology. Even though I screw up saying speech communication.
Dude, I talk for a living and I stutter half the time, so it really doesn't matter.
And then graduate. Then I go on to work at Victim Services Center. I do 7 years there, 7 years as a certified sexual assault counselor. I would train sexual assault counselors, and just using all of that experience to put in the book so that people can learn and they don't have to go through what I went through to have the knowledge to keep themselves safe.
Yeah. So what would you say now, not to be cliche, but if anybody watching has something that they're just ashamed of, or, this something is happening to them behind closed doors, what would you say?
Well, if it's someone that's being victimized, absolutely, you got to tell somebody you know and trust, and get that other person out of your life. I can't advise you not whether to press charges or not. I mean, that's up for the person to make, is because their situation is their situation. But you got to get the abuse to stop. That way, you can't begin to heal until you get it stopped. If it's a parent trying to keep their child safe, I would tell them, if anyone wants to spend more time with your kid than you do, that's a red flag. And you need to keep an eye on your kid, and you can tell your kid if anyone ever touches you or anything to tell me. But again, I was told that too. It's best for a parent to know what to look for a kid to defend themselves.
Okay, so that's interesting. That was coming next. As a parent, I mean, and I said this as well, but this is really interesting. Parents should really, be the ones to be looking out for this. You can tell your kids XYZ, if someone touches you, no one should touch you there, whatever. But that's a great point. If there's an adult that wants to spend more time with your kid than you do, that's not normal.
Or every time they come over, they're in the other room playing with them, and you can hear them roughhousing and tickling, and yeah, you ain't doing that with my kid.
Are there any other signs like that are just very specific signs to look for?
Well, there are some signs that are like really obvious. Like, for example, if a child has knowledge that they shouldn't have. Like, we had a girl at Victim Services Center. Her teacher was a concerned because she drew an erect penis on a turtle, and a 6-7-year-old girl should not know what an erect penis looks like.
Oh,
Yeah,
right there. And I hope that somebody reported that, because that obviously is a red flag. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, okay. we found out what happened to her.
Oh, oh gosh, it breaks my heart. I really do feel like there is a special place in hell for anyone that abuses children.
Well, and actually, I think there's a lesson to be learned here. Okay, so her older brother was the one who was sexually abusing her, but her older brother was also sexually abused, so he was just acting out on her. So I don't think his motive was the same as Jeff's. I mean, it's clearly just as wrong, but he probably didn't know what he was doing was wrong because his boundaries had been violated. So
100%. You're right. And that's, again, going back to Menendez, that's what Lyle did to Eric because he did not know any better. That's what Jose did to him. So it's like this horrible, vicious cycle. Like you said, he didn't have the same intentions, but it was still awful nonetheless for his victim or survivor. So I want to make sure I got to everything that I had written down to ask you. So do you have anything planned speaking wise that I can plug? I mean, I have your book. I want to plug that. But if there's anything else coming up for you, let me know so I can just, throw it out there.
No, okay. I spoke with someone today about a potential speaking engagement in April in Ohio. They're going to meet with the committee and figure out whether or not they want me or not. But that would be nice. April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So, and it'll be right before my birthday. So I might spend my 53rd birthday, and Geraldo lives in Cleveland, so maybe I'll go see Geraldo in Cleveland. You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
So I think it was 95, me and my dad went out to LA to be on the Lisa Gibbons daytime talk show.
Yes.
And so the producers had me send a bunch of pictures of me when I was like 10 years old, like old sports photos, and so that they could back then they'd have to take a picture of them so that they could put them on the air, or you like when we're talking.
Yeah.
And so we're in the green room, me and my dad, and Lisa walks in and introduces herself, and she goes, "Jody, oh my God." She was like, "You were so cute. I saw those pictures of you when you were little. You were just so cute." I said, "Yeah, I was too cute. That's why I'm here." And look, she turned red as like you are right now.
You really said that? You swear you said that? You really did? Oh my God.
I said, "Yeah, I was too cute. That's why I'm here."
The fact that you said that to Lisa has me, that's pretty much the best thing that I've heard in a long time. But I want to ask you, if there's one thing that you want your readers to take away from your book, or just anyone listening, what would it be?
I mean, I would say one, if you haven't read the book, I would recommend reading it. I think it is interesting. It's almost like a two parts. It's one of me telling the story of me taking karate growing up, but then it's the second part where I'm giving tips on, what not to say in front of your kids. Like, you don't say, "Yeah, if anyone ever does that, I'll kill them." Well, then that's what my dad said, and that's what I figured my dad would do, so I kept it quiet. So you're saying something to try to help your kid, but you're hurting the kid. So there's a lot of valuable information like that for parents. If you have a niece or nephew or a grandkid, get it, read it, pass it along. Because there's a lot of good information, and I'd rather you have at least a fighting chance against these predators because they're out there.
Yeah, it's really gross how many of them are out there. And I'm going to link out everything in the episode notes, where you can find Jody, where you can buy his book, his website. Follow him on X. Oh, I follow you everywhere. I follow you on X. I follow you on Instagram. I'm not huge on Facebook, but I probably follow you there too.
I'm lame on Instagram.
No, you're not. I don't think you're lame. I think Instagram's annoying. That you have to. It's such a specific app. I'm getting kind of sick of it. So yeah, whatever. I like X. I'm a big Twitter person. Well, Jody, thank you so much for joining the Outlier podcast and Pop Crime TV. I really, really do hope that you continue to speak and you continue to just advocate for survivors, because I think what you're doing is so important, and I want to thank you.
Now this is Lolo. This is Lolo, and I thank you for your kind words.